So this last tip is all about customizing type by outlining it. And in Adobe Illustrator, when you outline type, you do lose the ability to edit the text, but you gain the ability to make bespoke customizations. And often it's these professional touches that a client is really looking for when they come to you to create something for them. It means it's no longer an off-the-shelf logo. Someone can't find the same font, put the same name in and arrive at the result you've come to. You've really created something far more tailored and special. So I'm going to share with you in this lesson a few of the common changes that I might look to make. These are examples from previous projects, and hopefully you learn something along the way so that you're able to edit and customize your type. And the good news is it's really easy to do this. So as mentioned, you begin by making sure your type is outlined. So with it selected, the shortcut for that is Command or Control Shift O. And once your type is outlined, you first begin taking a look at it. What might you want to change? What elements could you improve? So in this example, you can see I've identified up here that I wanted to make the N sharper, as we have in the word London down below. So we were looking to create a sharper N, and you can see I've just wireframed in the changes first of all. I've needed to take care, and that's what these blue guidelines are for, that the width remains consistent. And I think just used the pen tool to create this wireframe to give some guidance. But when it comes to altering the actual shape, well, if we select this outlined N that's sitting behind, we want to start trying to pull its elements to fit this guideline we've created. So I can see I've got two anchor points there. I'm going to use the pen tool and just remove one of the anchor points, and the same down here, so that we've got a completely straight line. And then hitting A so that we're on the direct selection tool, I want to click to select just this anchor point first of all, and I'm going to drag it down so it intersects with the path on my guideline. And then I'm going to head up here, and this time we're going to delete all of these anchor points because we no longer need this straight section. So we'll go ahead and delete these, and then we turn our attention to the other side. So you can see I'm directly editing the outline of this type, but in a quick and easy way. By removing anchor points, the shape will simply attempt to connect to the nearest point. And by doing that, we'll remove this point as well. It really gives you control over the shape and form the entire type takes. And I'm going to snap this up. I just need to zoom in. We'll take it to about there. A little lower. Yeah, just so it's meeting our guideline. And then if I delete the guides that I made, you can see we've successfully made that adjustment. So we've sharpened up the N, we've kept the width consistent, and that was by directly editing that shape. So that's one adjustment you may like to make to a font like this one for consistency, or to make a particular letter stand out as a little different. So in this case, giving it those sharper angles. And then if we look here at this artboard, so the original E, this is often the case with E's. The arms end at different points. And here I've decided I'm going to create a straight end point and then elongate them, I think, a little in the end for balance. So to do that, you could use the shape builder tool. And if you select the guideline you've made, and the original shape as long as it's outlined. If you use the shape builder, which is Shift M, and hold Alt to subtract, you can just cut away at the portions you want to remove. I'll zoom in to get that one. And now we've neatened up that edge on the E, if that's the kind of style you want to create for the font. And let's say that's now a little unbalanced. We just want to elongate them slightly. If you use the direct selection tool and click and drag to make sure you're going to hit all these anchor points on the end, simply use the right arrow key to nudge. And obviously the arrow key would correspond to the direction you want to take this. So you could nudge it just a few steps to elongate it if that was the desired effect. So that's another little tweak you can easily make to characters. If we come along here, well, this was an earlier version, and you can see from the original font, which felt in the general direction we wanted to take this, there were a lot of tweaks we made. So you're actually seeing, you know, a few of the steps in the evolution of this typeface. So you can see where I'm heading with these suggestions. We wanted to chop off these little endpoints on the C to give it a crisper edge. The N there, I mean, that's quite bizarre, but this was part of the original font. Obviously we want straight, hard edges. The E, as we just saw, making it a more regular shape. The T, I think, was a little unbalanced, so we wanted to trim the edges. The R, we wanted to kind of make it a more regular curve there around the central circle. The O, we wanted to make more regular, and the L felt a little unbalanced, so we wanted to improve the weight. So there would be different methods to make each of those adjustments. For the L, we might select just the anchor points on the edge and nudge them. And that's given the desired effect for that one. For the O, well, you could redraw the O using a circle to fill the correct height. That's the method I'd recommend using for that. And the R, perhaps a shape builder, just to trim the edges so they're a little neater, so they fit the circle. Shape builder for the T. In fact, if we select, we could do that right now. And the same for the N. And this is where the shape builder, oops, wrong modifier key. Shape builder can be so handy. In fact, no, we would need to just add a shape there. And now we can merge it. And the same up here. Until it intersects. Make sure both are selected and merge them. So it's those kind of little adjustments that I'd make my way through the font making to make sure I'm happy with it. And this was a different font below. I think this was the runner-up, and these were some suggested changes for this font. So again, a more regular, geometrically sound O. Some tweaks to the N, some tweaks to the C. We'll jump across to the London type for this. And funny enough, we decided to go the other way with London. In fact, if you look at the original N, see if I can isolate that for you. It's quite unusual, and I think this is a well-known font. This is Futura PT, but if you look at the N, the tip of it is way, way higher than the flat point that's across from it. So if I color these just to illustrate the difference, you know, that's miles below the baseline, And depending on the way you're using this, that could really, mess things up visually. If you've got quite a tight lockup, you kind of notice these little points sticking out. So in this case, we wanted to create this type of N. And so using really the reverse of the first technique I shared, we would tweak that, making sure that you keep the width consistent, just selecting anchor points, nudging things into place, adding an anchor point or two if you need to create that desired effect. Let's have a look at this one. So this was for Stanley Gibbons. They're a heritage company. They've been around for over 100 years in the UK, and they wanted to create a really memorable monogram that had to be perfectly balanced. So you'll see that a version they liked had these little serifs, and they actually preferred the look of something that had all the features of the interior of these characters, but they didn't like the way those serifs kind of bent one way and then the other on the outside. So we wanted to actually remove the outer serifs, and we achieved that. You can see these circles I've overlaid to make a framework. Achieve that using the shape builder tool to customize these. So if I take just these two in isolation together, you can see that this would be the new route we've plotted for the G to remove that serif. And that's how it looks when that's been filled in. So those are the kind of tweaks and adjustments that you should feel confident to make if you have an outlined version of the logo. It's quite easy to do. And if I use the shape builder here, first of all, you have to make sure the paths intersect. That's not quite touching. So if I try to use the shape builder to fill this, you can see it's actually connecting through that tiny little connected space here. So when you're positioning, you've got to be really precise and just make sure there's at least a little overlap. So that you can isolate and join one part to the other. So by doing that, you're able to completely bespoke and customize that type, which was the goal here, to achieve this result in the end. And there was an earlier lesson showing you how to create this kind of effect with the intertwining of letters and the shape builder as well. Let's come to one last example. And this time this is a script font. And sometimes you'll find this with script fonts. So we've got the brand name Signature, and just some of the characters, they're not as legible as we'd like them to be, or perhaps aesthetically we're not pleased with them. So I've circled that to show the client the changes I wanted to make. And you can see we've got a better top part for the G that we're going to swap in here. And the same here for the R. I quite like this element. And if you look, I've actually just grabbed this from here, and this I had grabbed from the N, but it makes quite a nice R because of the arc it follows. So again, this is using the shape builder tool. I would have isolated this letter, drag something over it, selected the two, shape builder, subtract, and there we have our element that we're able to use over here. So again, it's lots of little steps, but just using the shape builder to take bits and pieces and customize as we need to. And then the result you can see down here, when we've swapped those in, we've now got a far more legible and bespoke piece of type. So I hope this tip has helped you. It's one I use quite frequently, and once you become familiar with this, when you look at type, you'll no longer just accept it as it is, but you'll be dying to fine tune it, to bespoke it to you and of course to your client's requirements.